If you're like me, Grand Theft Auto is just one of those iconic games for a lot of reasons. I think really when it came out, there wasn't much like it. The amount of freedom you had in the world to explore and drive and play mature story based missions was really a lot of fun. And being rewarded for going off and finding exotic cars and upgrading to really crazy weapons and stuff like that, I think all had a satisfying payoff. But that was a long time ago. A long, long time ago. Games have evolved considerably since those days. However, as with many other famous franchises that we have seen over the last, 10 years or so, what is old is new again. And Rockstar has confirmed that Grand Theft Auto the Trilogy is in fact coming very, very soon with a finally really like a first look kind of trailer as to what we can expect. And I want to go over some of that with you guys today and talk to you guys about my thoughts on where this franchise probably should be going and what is this, who is this edition for, who is this definitive trilogy edition for. So right off the bat, you can get it on any platform. They got old, they got new, they got PC, they got Switch. So if you own a game console, you can get this game. Realistically, I wouldn't expect much different. At the time it came out, it was very cutting edge technology way back when. Obviously, by today's standards, not so much. So I think it's going to run pretty well on even the Nintendo Switch, which by far is the weakest of this list of hardware that they do offer. I don't think there's much of an issue there. So the game details, we are actually getting to see kind of what this package includes. And there's a lot of things that they have added here. And I want to talk a little bit about those with you guys. Across-the-board enhancements, including brilliant lighting and environmental upgrades. And the trailer that we're going to look together in a minute does highlight some of that. High-resolution textures, which, again, the trailer will look at that. Increased draw distances and upgraded controls and targeting from Grand Theft Auto 5 with quote-unquote much more. I don't know what the much more is. I think that's really about it. So when you think of those old games, nostalgia is a very powerful drug, right? We think of what the old games look like, and when we see remasters of them, for most of us, at least myself, you see it and you say, oh, that's what it looked like. But trust me, it wasn't. So let's go ahead and scroll down here to the embedded video that they have offered. And this just launched, by the way, on online the other day too. You don't have to get to it from the official, they've got their little built-in launcher here, but you don't have to get to it from here. You can watch it on YouTube anywhere. And we're just going to go ahead and pause it in a couple places so we could take a look at it together. Okay, so the first thing I want to show you guys is, and you can see this here. God, why is this so tiny? Because I guess this is the problem with this launcher. It doesn't really matter. What I wanted to show was that they've done a lot of things with texture detail here. The sky cap, for example, the skybox, which was just a solid color back then, it now actually has some color to it. You can see the tree here has a little bit more foliage to it on one side versus the other. And it definitely does look brighter and more vibrant. I'm not even going to dismiss that at all and say that any of that doesn't have a, comparison. You can even see just in how basic some of the images are versus how much nicer they look. You are getting more reflection. You are getting more shadows. You are getting more texture detail in everything that you see. So it is going to look like, for the most part, a modern game, almost with a very stylized look to it, because it's still relying on the old assets that were drawn the way they were drawn. They didn't go back and remap voice cap with the faces. They didn't go back and remap face and a lot of texture details. People still have that distinct look. And I believe the next shot here, you're going to get a close-up of somebody's face. And you'll see what I mean, that people just don't, I guess I was wrong. I guess people just don't look a whole lot different. They still have that same kind of weird polygonal look to them. Here we go. They still have that same weird look to them. So on the left, you can see, yes, You do have a more defined beard line, for example, over here where you can see a little bit more of the individual hair, as opposed to on this one, they just used a lot of like shadows, and you can see how rough that back part of their hair is. It's much more like the bangs are, and the back of the hair is much more squared because that was the technology back then. But by today's standards, when you look, let me just play a little more so you can see this guy's face. By today's standards, the center character talking doesn't look great. It looks like something out of like Team Fortress 2. It's very cartoony. It doesn't have that realistic flair to it. And I think that's where this is going to struggle a lot. Yes, it's going to look better, and it should look better, honestly. Everything should look clearer and more concise. But even in the character models, they still are going to have that same very polygonal base to them. Their movements, the way that they were motion captured, individual things like, here, let's go back to this one. Individual things like fingers and the way that they move their hands. It's going to seem very weird because they didn't map it any differently. So when a character's talking, a lot of times they're going to have closed fists because back then their hand was just like a square. I mean, think of like what Cloud's face and Cloud's body looked like in Final Fantasy VII. He was like a walking purple monster. But we filled in the gaps, right? We didn't have any... other reason to doubt that what they were trying to convey. And clearly this guy is leaning in and he's trying to, point and get explain to you what's going on. I understand that. But don't expect this to be something that it's not, I guess is the gist I want to say about this. Don't expect this game to revolutionize the way you think of old Grand Theft Auto games. And really, I think the biggest problem is, despite the fact that they are including some of these modernization in controls, they are not going to be including modernization in gameplay. So things you take for granted now, such as running and crouching, which turns into a slide, or running up to a wall and clambering or climbing on top of it, or swimming, or climbing trees, or some of the finer tuning animations when you're loading and shooting various weapons, the heft of a larger weapon versus a lighter weapon. None of that is going to make it into these games. And these are all great games, really. I mean, honestly, like any three of these games, I'm pretty sure they probably won Game of the Year for their year specifically. And all of us have very fond memories of some of these games. I mean, I know for me, I absolutely adored Vice City. Obviously, a child of the 80s. 80s is my favorite, genre of movies and music and entertainment. I felt like I was living in the 80s in Vice City. I loved it. And even with CJ in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, just a very interesting take on him and working his way through Groveland, and some of the people he met and the characters and the language they used was all a big culture shock to me, and I loved it. So these games absolutely hold fond memories in my heart, but don't expect the way you play games today to emulate games back then. Destruction, the way you drive through things, the way the world dynamically shifts and changes, the way vehicles start to look as they take damage, the way that you can shoot splinters out of, the way glass splinters when it's shot, bullet casings on the ground. All of these things will not make it into these remakes. Yes, they will look prettier. Yes, they will get a fresh coat of paint. But a lot of the core gameplay mechanics will not. So for that reason, I personally am not interested in this. I had my fun with these games decades ago when they came out. I thoroughly enjoyed them. And while I do understand that this is partially tugging at the heartstrings of people like me who are old fans, as well as the new generation who maybe wants to kind of explore some of these games that made, put us on the map in terms of like cutting edge games. Like there was no more cutting edge game than Grand Theft Auto 3 at the time. There wasn't. I remember I had to go into the store and my dad had to buy it for me because they wouldn't sell it to me because you had to be an adult. So my dad actually bought it for himself, technically, and then handed it to me and we walked out of the store. But this was a big deal. This is what revolutionized a lot of the nonsense with Congress and the standardizations of violence in video games, and these definitely hold a place in the history of gaming, and we're thankful for that. But are today's generation of gamers going to be willing to put up with the missing features that we expect? quick saves, quick loads, the ability to change your loadouts on the fly, the ability to customize weapons in a way that you expect, the ability to customize cars in the way you expect. No, none of that is going to exist in this game. And this definitive edition, remake, remaster, whatever you want to call it, doesn't do that. It doesn't take the game from those old era into the new era with anything other than graphics. And while that's flashy, you and I both know that is not going to hold people's attention. In my opinion, if Rockstar is working on anything, it should be a new Grand Theft Auto game. We shouldn't keep going back in the past. These games exist. They're readily available on any platform, any console. And yeah, they look old, and yeah, they run like crap. But they're fine. They're serviceable if you want them. That's my take. I want to hear from you guys below. Let me know if I'm way off base on this. If you pre-ordered and you're going to enjoy it, more power to you. I'm super happy and excited for you guys. For me, I'm waiting for Advance Wars. Just found out it was delayed. I know Advance Wars is an old as hell game, and I could take all of those exact same points I just made for Grand Theft Auto and apply them to Advance Wars, but Advance Wars is my jam. So I get it, but I want to hear from you guys below. Hope you guys found this video and thought process informative. Thank you guys so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.